Janet, you did it. You brought us into your void. If I had a heart, it would be pounding.
Michael.
You know, you'd think there'd be side effects, but I feel great. How's the hair? Is it still amazing?
Michael, there may have been some side effects for the humans.
Huh.
Dude, why are there so many Janets? And why do I sound like Janet? You also look like Janet. Do I? Why? What? What is happening? Oh no. Am I wearing a vest? Oh, Michael, help me.
This is going to be tricky. How do we even tell them apart?
Oh.
Okay, that one's Jason.
Welcome to Gimmicks, a podcast about the high-concept, experimental, structure-breaking gimmick episodes of TV, from musicals to bottle episodes to a whole lot of Janets. I'm Derek B. Gale, and who's with you today?
Hey, it's Arizona Shrimp Pony, David Arnold.
Yes, and we are talking about The Good Place, Season 3, Episode 10, entitled Janets, which originally aired on December 6th, 2018. Oh boy, you picked a real doozy.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this one, Derek.
This is going to be so challenging because if you are unfamiliar with The Good Place, there's a lot of legwork to get through with that. This is definitely one where it's like, maybe you should just like watch the show if you want to listen to the conversation, if you don't want to spoil, because we're going to have to spoil like everything. So basically it was this fantasy comedy airing on NBC from 2016 to 2020, created by Michael Schur, who is an alum of The Office, co-created Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So like pretty much all your major like uplifting comedies of the last like decade to 2 decades, maybe.
Yeah.
Can very much he's at least was part of them. Like we will have to talk about a lot of the idiosyncrasies of this show, but in the broadest possible terms, it's about just like a handful of characters in the afterlife and then a lot of other stuff beyond that. It's a very, very high concept show. It's a very, very well known for like having these really big, like status quo breaking, game changing twists. It's got really heavy serialization. It has like these conversations of ethics and philosophy. It's got commentary on like how our present day real world is a dystopia. It's got like a really unique and comedic tone, but it's still like a very optimistic show, even in spite of talking about all of that really complicated stuff. It's just like one of the most creative and unique shows on TV that's ever existed, which is probably why it's got like tons of accolades, like Emmy nominations, Hugo Awards, Peabody Awards, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, Derek, how did you come by The Good Place? Did you watch this on live TV, or how did you find this?
I saw half of it on live TV. I know I watched the final season live, and I think I saw some of season 3 live. But so I remember when it originally came out, I heard about it and thought the concept sounded really interesting. But I didn't get around to watching the first season. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, it's a must watch. I figured it would be like a comedy that maybe I would binge on a streaming service later. It wasn't something that felt like appointment television to me. But what got me to actually really watch it, like for real, was after the first season finale, I read a piece, I think it was by Emily St. James when she was still writing for AV Club. I think maybe she was writing for Vox at that point, but whoever it was a writer that I already followed. And I read a piece by them that basically the log line was that like The Good Place is like the best follow-up to Lost that there has been so far. Wow. Which I was like, what? I wish I'd thought of this. I would have like tried to dig up what that piece was now. And it was like, and that was the first time that like, cause going and watching it, I was like, I understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because it's like tonally, no, not even close. But the idea of like, you know, the idea of like putting a sort of this like very diverse group of characters that like are very unalike and come from very different worlds and very different life experiences, throwing them together in like a unique situation where they are in a very specific place that they sort of can't get away from, but also like building who they are through flashback and learning more about them and then unfolding sort of this, realizing there's a larger mystery to who they are as characters, and then also a larger mystery to the place that they're in with like really big twists, which of course the final episode of the first season is like a huge game-changing twist that completely upends the entire status quo, which wasn't revealed in that piece either. I will say. So
well done. Well done.
It was just like, I probably will never be able to find what article I'm talking about, or maybe I'm misremembering it. I don't know, but I know the Lost allegory or the Lost association was there. And that was sort of like, this show sounds fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
Forking fascinating. And so I watched the first season. Then I think only the first season was out. And so I watched that first season. And then I think I watched some of the second season as it aired, and then ended up falling off of it and had to catch back up through the third season to watch the fourth season live again. So I was kind of in and out watching it live, but I definitely was like part of the wave, I think, of people that heard that the first season finale is incredible and then jumped on it and was like, okay, it lives up to the hype. And good show, A+.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's funny, I came by this and we started going to a gym, and I needed something to watch, and so I just randomly picked The Good Place. And one episode on my shitty little phone on a treadmill and I said, this deserves a bigger television. The cast is smoking hot, so you really need to get them a high pixel count. It was laugh out loud funny. So it's also an inappropriate show for the treadmill. You need something you can like run to, and the first episode I think is just spectacularly told, and there are some awesome jokes with Eleanor just trying to figure out how the fork she got into the good place, how she's managing this, what's going on. And so I also told my husband, I was like, we have to watch this show, and he was a no-go on it. So I was like, fine, well, I'll just watch this by myself. And eventually, that thing where you just catch a couple of minutes off of your spouse watching television, you go, oh, this is actually very interesting. And so we both got into it and were just jaws on the ground at the end of season 1. Yeah. And then we got onto it live, which was great.
Yeah, it's a wild twist. It's one that we'll have to spoil for the podcast.
Yeah, we really will.
If you're listening and you're like teased to watch it, I mean, it's good enough show that I'm like, don't listen to this damn podcast episode.
Yeah.
Watch the show first, then come back to it in like a few months or something. I think it's just like, I've never seen a show pull the long con in such a successful way, I think, because I remember watching the first season and I was like, I like this show and I think I get what people are saying, but I don't quite understand like the Lost parallel other than the flashbacks in the first season. And I think there's even points when it's sort of like, I can sort of see how this show with this premise could go on for a while, but it couldn't go on forever. And I really still, even knowing that like people talked about a twist ending and stuff, I think that like what the twist being that like the whole first season, it's about characters in the good place, which is essentially, a non-denominational heaven. Right. And then the twist at the end of the season is just like, it's not the good place. It's the bad place. You're actually in hell all along, which like for so many stories would be such a hacky twist. Like, I think because it is such an obvious, like Twilight Zone ending, it's such an obvious, every like fan theory of everything that has ever been made, it's always like, it's a dream all along. Right. They're actually in hell all along. In Lost, they're actually in purgatory all along was like the common theory, right? Like, it's such an obvious one that I feel like you almost like don't expect it to ever go there because it is so obvious and like no show would blow up their premise that hard. Right. Like, especially at the end of a 13 episode first season, like no one would do that. You've got to stick to the status quo to a certain extent. Right. And the fact that this show commits to that, pulls it off. And then when you look back, it is like so clear that that's where they were going the whole time. Like it makes sense. Like it's so incredible to do, and it's so risky too, because if you aren't invested, like I feel like you could be not invested in the show on the premise alone in that first season. Yeah. And it becomes such a radically different show that justifies that long con they were pulling. It's just like I can't imagine how they were able to pull it off as well as they did, honestly.
and what it was really remarkable, you mentioned the status quo. That's kind of like the high concept of the show is that it never allows itself to be a status quo show. It takes all of the first season to resolve this big twist ending. And then we open season 2 with Michael, the bad place architect who's trying to make this pretend to be the good place. He keeps resetting the memories of the humans. And you think, oh, well, this is what season 2 is going to be about. We're going to watch them be in zany situations. And the show's like, nope, we're going to stop that real quick. And over season 2, there are 3 different major plot lines that other network television shows would drag out to a whole season. I will say this show moves really fast.
It's bananas how fast this show moves.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because it's like there's a lot of shows that I think are maybe kind of arbitrarily short seasons or forced to be short seasons, or it's just living in the streaming era or whatever. And I'm like, they could have stretched it out to be a 22 episode season if they wanted to. This is the kind of show where I think it's sort of like they really embraced and benefited from like the classical like British style of television where it's like, this is going to have a finite run. This is going to be short. We're not going to waste a second on this show. And I think it really benefits it. And I think it helps, like you were saying, like, you know, every time there seems to be a new status quo set up, they sort of blow it up in like 5 or 6 episodes in some cases. And I think it really helps because it's like, they never let themselves go stale at any point. Like it is always, as soon as they have let something run its course, it moves on to the next even bigger thing right after it. It's bananas.
Yeah. And it's weird also to think about it being a Michael Schur show, because you think about Michael Schur, you think about workplace comedy, but this is like a workplace comedy, but the workplace is the afterlife ? And the denizens therein, the customers, which is the 4 humans we're going to be talking about today, and these sort of like afterlife embodiments of good, evil, and everything kind of in between. And I think that's part of what like really resonated for me. And I've also got to say, I mean, Ted Danson's really hot, and he is acting, capital A acting. And I think you said, you know, the end of the first season, it feels kind of hacky to be like, oh, it was the bad place all along. A lot of that's in Danson's delivery, which is just hilarious. Yeah.
It's so good. I mean, that I rewatched the first season finale last night just because it's been I haven't done a full rewatch of the show yet, and it's like one of those shows where it's like I know a full rewatch would be so beneficial because there are so many things that are set up early. But in that first season finale, it's like that, like when he just transitions to like the devilish laugh after Eleanor's figured it out, and it's like it is so over the top, but that's what sells it, because the whole show is always kind of tonally out there and like, you know, very like bright and colorful and kind of silly, and everybody is kind of a little bit heightened on this show. So it's like that's how you're able to sell what is otherwise kind of a hacky twist, is like you go for it and you sell it and do it in the highest way possible, you know. Yeah, it's so smart, and everybody in this cast is hot. It's not just Ted Danson, and every single person. It is amazing.
Such a good cast.
You are dead.
Cool.
You're in the good place.
Oh, did I have a purse? No, I'm dead. Right.
Every one of you is a good person.
I'm not supposed to be here.
Wait, what?
I can't risk going to the bad place.
Maybe it's not that bad. Hey, Janet, what is the bad place like?
This is what's happening there right now.
Well, it doesn't sound awesome.
The Good Place, coming to Thursdays after Superstore this fall on NBC. There's a lot of ifs in this world.
If you act with virtue.
If you want to just lay here and cry in your hoodie.
But if you haven't seen The Good Place...
Well, what the
Fork.
Are you
waiting for?
That's hilarious.
Brilliant.
Insane. Smart. Really
Forking.
clever. You haven't seen
The Good Place.
I feel like a real weenie.
The new season of The Good Place premieres September 27th on NBC. Stream past seasons on Netflix.
If not,
Get the fork out.
So what makes Janet's a good episode for us to cover on Gimmicks, Derek? What's the sort of like spin that we're going to take talking about this episode?
I mean, like, here's the thing with this show, there's not like a single standalone. It is very highly serialized. So like it's going to be a lot of context, but even still, I do think that this episode is so interesting in that the majority of it is just D'Arcy Carden playing, the 4 human cast members. She plays herself still for a significant of the episode portion of the episode, and they even introduced a new Janet in the episode that she also plays. I think they total like her screen time as different characters, and it totals like 40 minutes for a 22-minute episode of TV.
Isn't that wild?
It's bananas. Like, they put her to work. It's wild. And also, like, and then in the context of that, like, the episode still only takes place in 2 locations, right? One location is like an office, which is like a fun kind of, very basic place. But then the other location is just the Void, which is a giant white space where a lot of special effects have to be done to do everything that they're doing in that white space. And I think it was like Michael Schur like described it as like this weird combination of like feeling like a classic bottle episode because of how limited the location and cast is, but it's definitely not a bottle episode because it's actually very expensive and very complicated to do and very challenging to make.
Very expensive. I imagine that filming an entirely white area and not having the camera always show up on Ted Danson's glasses has to be one of the most difficult things to do. I mean, I spent a lot of time rewatching this, specifically looking at the reflection on Ted's glasses, just to be like, what are we doing here in order to capture this? A little bit of it was some camera angling, but a little bit had to be VFX that was done after the fact, because if it's all white, there's nothing else you can do. I will say that rewatching this post-pandemic gave me some John Oliver The Void vibes, because it was the same sort of like, I'm in a big white area.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Yeah. It's a bottle episode, which I think is a lot of fun. Bottle episodes are supposed to save you money. This show did not do that.
Yeah.
Probably not listeners to this podcast, but a lot of people think of bottle episodes as things that are filler in a story. And there's not. There is huge revelations happening in this episode. So it is critical to the overall plot of this serialized season 3 that we learn what we learn in this episode.
Yeah. And it's still all kind of tied to this greater theme of the self that they talk about. So it's really smartly well done. Like, I mean, that's one of the things I think, there was lots of interviews about, from the creators about this episode, because I think everybody recognized when it came out, like, this is pretty wild that this was done. So there's tons of interviews you could read, and I would definitely encourage, seeking them out. They're all linked on Wikipedia. They're not hard to find. But I think one of the things that Michael Schur was talking about, I don't remember why I was just making this tangent into the production stuff about it. So I don't remember why I was saying this, so I'm just going to start talking about it. But the idea for the episode, it was a thing where like they were just thinking back in season 2, like a year before it aired, they were like, we have these sort of ideas and concepts for locations that exist in the afterlife. We haven't explored them. One of those is Janet's Void. So what if we do that? And since it's in Janet's head, we have some way that that all the human characters are represented by Janet, and they give D'Arcy Carden something to do. And I remember one of my thoughts when watching this was like, when I watched the first season of this show, I was like, D'Arcy Carden is really good and seems to be very versatile, but there does seem to be something very limited if they're making her play this AI type. I mean, she's not really an AI, but like a riff on an AI that is just eternally kind of peppy, but like can't really evolve or anything. Can't have a character arc on a show that's very character centric. Like, I remember thinking like, she's good, but I can't not see where they could take this character if this show continues, which is so funny. Then you watch this episode and it's like, oh no, there was never an issue. They always
you could see it all. Yeah.
You could see it all.
And there's a glimpse in season 1 where she plays bad Janet. So you do really get to start to see like, oh, D'Arcy's got some like acting chops. Because she goes from being helpful, delightful, just always there and present, to like an absolute garbage, farts in order to make a point. I guess not a person, not a woman, but the busty Alexa in black leather clad. Yeah. Like, and it's so clear. And then I think that they are very smart about how they sort of give Janet more to do and reasons in the story to have more agency and sort of develop beyond her original status of just like, an iOS essentially. Yeah. And again, it's all stuff that it's sort of like, I feel like if you read some of the summaries of like broad synopses of The Good Place, I feel like it's just sort of like, this just sounds like it's like some basic ass bullshit, but the show like does it
handles it so well. Like, yeah, if you're going to have like an AI type character, of course they're going to become like more self-aware over time, and you're going to get like a humanity arc for them. But like the show sort of justifies it so well. And I think because you want to see D'Arcy Carden like do more stuff, like, it's just like, you know what? Yeah, sure. I will take it just to see her be able to express more and play more versions of herself and just generally get more to do. And then I think you eventually get to an episode like this where it's sort of like they trusted her enough where it's sort of like, yeah, she can handle it. It'll be fine. Yeah. We know that she can do this.
Yeah, and she carries it. I one of the things I saw when I was doing my research was that Shore in an interview said that he considered it the greatest snub of the season, that Carden didn't get a nod for an Emmy nomination for her performances, plural, from the episode because she did so well. She is these characters. It's going to be hard for us to talk about them because if you haven't seen this episode, you're going to imagine that Derek and I are talking about these 4 other actors, but it's every single one of them is D'Arcy Carden.
Yeah. And she's like so humble about it. She was talking to Entertainment Weekly, and I love this quote because she said when I told her what they were going to do, she said, I remember just being stunned. I remember putting my whole entire hand over my face and sort of peeking out between 2 fingers, like not sure if I could even face it. Yeah, and she was talking about it, she's like, overwhelmed by it and was sort of like equal parts excited, but also kind of hoped that they would change their mind about it, which is like, yeah, that totally makes sense. It's going to be like a fun challenge as an actor, but also you're basically being asked to carry pretty much this entire episode, like when I was rewatching it, I was sort of like, at first I was like, oh, you know what? I remember this episode having even more of all 4 Janets together in the same room. And really, I think they are smart about like sort of keeping those to being only important scenes, because I think that would be a little too overboard if it was only all 4 Janet humans throughout the entire episode. But then it's sort of like, so yeah, they do have all the other scenes in the office to sort of balance that out. But then I'm like, but she's still in those scenes too. Like, she's still in every single scene of this episode in one capacity or another. Like, one version might be a little less visual effects intensive, but like she still has to be on set every single time. And so the idea that she's like trying to like study these other actors that she's going to have to emulate, 4 other actors that she has to emulate, while also filming her own scenes, filming all 4 of those scenes, but then also being the only actor that's also in the other scenes. And there's 2 versions of her in those scenes too. Like, I can't understand. I just, the exhaustion that must have been there for this, I just can't imagine.
and let's just for a moment, and I know everyone's cool because I love this cast, so I just have to assume they're all like cool, wonderful people. But not only are you emulating other actors, you're emulating your coworkers. Like you're doing an impression of the art that your coworkers have made for the past 3 years. That's humbling. No wonder the quote that you gave, like, no wonder she was scared to do this. Like, this is a little scary.
Yeah. It's wild. And again, like it wasn't, I think that's already a high concept enough concept. But you still have to like write a good episode around it. Right. And I think like the one of the things that these writers on this show were very smart about was like, I think always finding a reason for some of just the weird stuff they would be throwing out there. Like, there would be some jokes for the sake of jokes, but the majority of times, if they had a joke or an idea, it was for a very good reason or to sort of like examine a concept. And so like they still had philosophical advisors on this show that they would talk to because of all the conversations about philosophy and ethics. And they like consulted them. It was Todd May and Pamela Hieronymi to learn about the concepts of identity and the self, essentially. And like, I think there are people those 2 had worked on the show frequently, but like to bring them in specifically for this one to be like, we're going to do this concept, and we want you to, we want to continue talking about our philosophical stuff, even in the context of this sort of gimmicky thing. And they'd even been like, maybe we'll just do it for like 1 act. And they were sort of like, no, we have to really work this into the script for the actual backbone of the episode. So it isn't just like a 1-act gag. It is sort of like the reason that the conversations in this episode happen, or the sort of character developments in this episode happen, are based in this idea of the self represented by all these different characters having to not be themselves because they're all being played by D'Arcy Carden.
I'm glad you gave a shout out to Hironimi. She appears in the final episode of the series.
Oh, nice.
In that she's guiding a philosophical conversation, and she famously brings up the trolley problem. And if you have heard of the trolley problem, it is because of this moral philosophy professor who has sort of brought it into the common parlance, and it's why it's on every episode of television ever now. So if you've been annoyed by wondering if you would flip the switch, you can thank her for that.
Yeah. So I think it's also worth pointing out that like Orphan Black was on around this time, and that was really, I think, part of the reason why they were convinced they could do it. Sure, even said that. It was like Orphan Black was good, and they pulled it off. We could do it for one episode, I'm sure, and they did. So good for them.
Yeah, it's a hard get, but it's been done. So let's do it for ourselves. It's weird that you're doing it for a 26-minute comedy that is about the afterlife, moral philosophy, and that again, it's maybe an episode where you could be trying to save a little bit of money, but nope, they went for it.
Yeah, no, this show is nothing if not a taker of big swings.
Yeah. For real.
Oh my God. I mean, I think it's probably is kind of important for the sake of our conversation to lay out the actual pieces that we're talking about character-wise. Do you want to talk about some of the actual characters that we're going to be talking about?
Yeah. So I want to be really clear that any increased bisexuality in our country was due to this show coming out, because this cast is really, really hot. So we got the headliners are Ted Danson, who plays Michael. He's an afterlife architect. We first get introduced to him as a good place architect. He later is revealed to be a bad place architect. He ends up signing up with the humans in order to avoid his destruction. And he is sort of the leader of this group, throughout the sort of developments that the season goes through. Right next to him as a headliner is Kristen Bell, and she plays Eleanor Shellstrop. She's the sort of subject of the first season, which is really all about that she's a trash person and shouldn't have gotten into heaven. And what is she doing here? Oh, she replaced Tia Sircar's Eleanor Shellstrop. They happen to have the same name, and they died in the same place. But again, that was all just a ruse. You probably have seen Kristen Bell in other work. Because she like Danson are incredibly well seasoned. Everyone else is a little bit new. So I'll first talk about William Jackson Harper, who plays Chidi Adegonye. He's a moral philosophy professor whose constant indecision lost him his girlfriend, his friends, and eventually his life. Not being able to make a decision about what he is going to do for his brother's wedding. He's standing on the street, not sure where to go, and an air conditioning unit falls on him and kills him. And that's what sends him to the afterlife. He was on a couple of like smaller shows. He was on some children's programming, but otherwise he was like a couple character arcs on like CSI. That's all I saw for him.
Also, one of those instances of like casting just like one of the hottest people alive to be like just a nerd. He's just a nerdy. Put some glasses on him. He's just a nerdy man, and it's like the most jacked, beautiful, one of the most beautiful actors of our time.
He references it in the episode, but there's a shot of him when he's going through his existential crisis and he's making chili in front of a room of philosophy students. He is not wearing a shirt, and man, you would not know it was there because they put this guy in a sweater vest all the time. It's muscles on muscles on muscles. It's wild. As Chidi, he is clean shaven and wears glasses. As William Jackson Harper, he has an incredible beard, and I would recommend that if you only know him from The Good Place, to please look up a picture of this man.
Yes.
Next in our cast of humans is Jamila Jamil, who plays Tahini Al Jamil. She is a wealthy heiress who spent her life doing good, but not for the right reasons, and she was always sort of doing it to catch up with her sister. Had some pretty incredible family stuff go on with that. Prior to this gig, she was a presenter on BBC, where she just sort of hosts shows and things and introduced segments. So this was like her first big break. And she's fantastic in it. I think she's wonderful.
Yeah, she is. I will also say you definitely said tahini instead of tahani, which
oh my
is
God.
a mistake that I make all the time because tahini is in fact very delicious, as is Jamila Jamil.
Tahani.
So.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I am in good company because there are characters who do that on the show in order to cause Tahani pain and suffering, since she is, in fact, in the bad place. My apologies to Tahani, who's probably my favorite character.
She's so good. She's so good. Yeah.
I say favorite, but then I got to talk about Jason
are.
Mendoza, played by Manny Jacinto. And we're first introduced to him. We think that he's a monk, a Tibetan monk. And he later reveals that no, he is also not a great person, doesn't belong in heaven. And really what the show gives you is that he's from Jacksonville, Florida. And it really says, you do the math. And that's great. It's really, really incredible. Manny Jacinto's cheekbones could cut glass. He is just an incredible guy. He was in the new Top Gun movie and they cut all of his scenes out. I think it's a war crime, just a war crime.
That is bananas. Wow.
And then obviously to wrap up the main cast, we are going to be talking a lot about D'Arcy Carden, who is Janet, not a girl, not a robot. But Eleanor did once describe her as busty Alexa. She is a Good Place Janet who Michael stole in order to sell his fake version of the Good Place to the humans. But Carden also plays Bad Janet, Neutral Janet, and in one episode of season 3, Disco Janet. Which was a pretty incredible, again, moment there. And then in this episode, she plays the 4 humans.
She plays basically everybody.
and because this is a bottle episode, it's pretty small. We've got some extras that we'll be talking about. There's only 3 guest casts here, which is a shame because the series has some really incredible guest cast. I mentioned Tia Sircar. She's incredible. Later would go on and be on a show that we both love, The After Party. You've got Mark Evan Jackson, who was first introduced as the almighty judge on high of all beings living and dead for all eternity. And then he says, my name's Sean. Which is great. He turns out to be sort of the head honcho of the Bad Place. He also hosts the Good Place podcast that NBC ran concurrently with the series, which was a very good listen. Jackson was a great host of that series. Just fantastic guest cast.
Yeah. It is really good. The guests that this show has, and a creative guest casting a lot of times too. Yeah. Cool. So to talk about this episode,
we have to sort of go into the Wayback Machine.
Yeah. Because it's a lot of setup, I think, to get to where we are with this.
Yeah. So here's the high and low of it for anyone who hasn't seen the series, but you're sort of dedicating yourself that you're not going to watch it because I'm about to tell you everything that happens up to this episode.
Although maybe it'll just be like, that sounds so fascinating that even with all the spoilers, because I do think that it's still good, even if you know what's going on, I think. So,
well, if that's you, write us an email and tell us how good we did on this synopsis. So high and low, there's a good place and there's a bad place. You could think about them as heaven and hell, but the show goes out of its way in the first episode to tell you that that's not quite right. You go to one of these based on how many points you earned during your life as a mortal. Doing good deeds earns you points. Harmful acts lose you points. It's interesting because a lot of the points conversation that was going on was happening on other episodes around the same time. So you've got the community episode, App Development and Condiments, that did Meow Meow Beans. Just a truly phenomenal episode of Community. Into the 2016 episode of Black Mirror Nosedive was about sort of China's social credit system. And Shore was a writer on that, which is kind of important for us to know about and think about. But there was a lot of conversation about points right now. And so it didn't surprise me that this was happening here as well. So for hundreds of years, these 4 humans have been torturing each other under Michael's designs of this fake good place. The first season's all about Eleanor figuring out that they are in fact in the bad place, only to have her memory erased. And then season 2 starts off with all these reboots, the humans constantly outdoing Michael, including in a pretty awesome scene one time Jason figuring it out, which is a really low blow to Michael. Just really incredible moment of acting. And eventually he relents and just joins the humans and they become Team Cockroach. And they're just going to try to fight against the oppression that is facing them down. And you think like, okay, this is the show. But it's not. They eventually make their way to the Judge Jen, because she's named for hydrogen, the first element. Played by Maya Rudolph, again, just phenomenal guest cast. And Jen allows them to go back to Earth and do a do-over. Michael sees that they're all doing a little bit better and is hopeful that they will all get into the good place, but then they all start to slip, so he intervenes. And through the course of his intervention, he accidentally exposes them to knowledge about the afterlife so that they can't get into the good place because all of their actions would be motivated out of the wrong way.
Yeah. So if you think that they were going to like stretch out like they're back on Earth for, you know, the next 2 years, nope, they ended in what, like 5 or 6 episodes?
They like each get an episode and then it's over.
Yeah.
But they're undeterred, so they start to think like, well, if we can't save ourselves, maybe we can save other people in our lives. And they go to do that, but eventually Sean, who is, again, in charge of the bad place, confronts them and says none of them will be getting into the good place. And he says it so suspiciously and evilly that Michael starts to think like, wow, maybe something else is wrong. And that really takes us up to where we are today. At the end of the last episode, they were in a battle with demons from the bad place. Janet whisked all the humans away into her void, and that's where this episode starts.
Yeah. Which it's like, it is pretty wild because if you do jump into because I hadn't rewatched the show, like I said, so if you do jump into this one, there's no recap. So it's like, oh, we're here now in the void. And that's just where this episode starts.
When you watch this, did you watch it on Netflix?
I did. Yeah.
I did too. And it was really interesting. And we'll talk about the title card in a second. But when the episode starts, there's a title card that says a Netflix original series. And I tried to figure out why this showed up. Maybe because Netflix was distributing it.
In some other markets, I think I don't know exactly where, but other regions, like other countries, it was a Netflix original. It did not air on NBC. It wouldn't air on I don't know exactly what countries it was, but it would just, their version of NBC didn't broadcast it. It would go straight to it. Riverdale is actually the same way. A lot of, I think in Canada, that is technically people know it as a Netflix show. It is wild though that it says currently on Netflix original, maybe it didn't on mine and it does on yours because you're watching.
Oh, because I'm in Europe.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is because I don't think it said that on mine.
Yeah, I'm going to VPN this and find the answer later. Yeah, but you're right. The episode starts right away. We are in the void. We are there. There is no explanation. And that actually is where we'll get started in talking about the episode. Anything else you wanted to say before we get into it, Derek?
Nope, let's do it. Let's talk.
Great. So we start right away. Michael appears very small in the center of a solid white space, and the camera does an awesome zoom to reveal him. And he expresses wow, we're here. And Janet joins him and explains that she brought all the humans into her void, but there was a little side effect. And that leads to the camera panning over, and we see 4 other identical Janets. They're all wearing the exact same blue vest, frilly little, I guess it's a dickie, with a little floral pattern and a blue skirt. And all of the humans have taken on Janet's appearance, but they're acting like their original characters. And Michael even remarks how will we be able to tell them apart? And the camera does an instant cut to Jason Janet, who is pointing at his breasts. We're going to get into some pronoun problems with this, but her breasts, and making a delighted expression, which alerts Michael that this is obviously Jason. And then that leads us straight to the title card.
It's such just a good reveal, just immediately throwing you into it, you know? You don't see the main cast until the very end of the episode, because we do start here with just 5 D'Arcy Cardens on screen. In this case, all dressed exactly the same. But it's funny because it's if you're watching this knowing what's going on and you're watching for it, you can already tell just in her body language, just from standing there before any of them say any lines, that it's she is the actor is carrying herself differently for each of these characters, just from how she's standing, where she's putting her arms, whether she's fidgeting or moving around while she's standing there. And it is right from I know that they were joking, how are we going to tell them apart? But it's I can kind of immediately tell who they are, actually, just because she's doing such a good job at embodying them right from the get-go. I'm glad that they changed their clothes because it makes it very easy to track. But there is a version of this episode where they never do, and I think you still probably would have been able to figure out who everyone was throughout it because she's just that good at it, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And there are some like unique vocal tics, and we'll talk about those as we go through the episode, that each character has. For example, anytime that Tahani Janet is talking, she has this faux English accent, and that's already been remarked upon because everyone in the Good Place speaks the same language, even if they didn't speak English, which leads Eleanor to at one point being like, well, wait, why the fuck she got this English accent? Like, where's that coming from? Oh, she's doing it on purpose.
It's so good. I actually forgot about that. Yeah. So it's like, it even has a little bit of artifice to it when D'Arcy Carden's doing the version of it. Yeah.
So the title card's a very simple one. It's just white text on a green background. First it says The Good Place. Then appearing below is created by Michael Schur. And then a new card appears with the chapter number. And in this case, it's 36. Pretty simple. I did go down a Reddit rabbit hole, trying to figure out what this font was. And mostly inconclusive, but there seemed to be some general agreement that it was a custom made with a couple elements, but otherwise a Brandon grotesque bold.
Wow. Beautiful. I mean, you know what? That actually is like useful information for fans for anytime they want to make graphics or anything like that. So
make your own title card.
Pretty incredible.
Have fun.
There is a particular kind of nerd that exists that is just like a font nerd. And I find it so fascinating.
Couldn't be me. It became a mission to find this answer, but I will tell you that I saw these people talking and I was like, you are talking a different language than me.
Once people start talking about like the very particular kerning and stuff like that, I'm like,
yes,
I don't know how you have the eye. I don't have the same eyes that you do, I guess. I just don't know what you see. But it is always interesting when it's like when there are title cards that are not super stylized, like they clearly didn't just make their own font for it, you know? But although in this case, maybe they kind of did, when it's just like a very kind of anonymous font, it is kind of interesting just to be like, how did you land exactly where you did? And what are you like, could I just pull this up on Word right now? Or did you really purchase a new font for this or create?
And I think part of why there is so much discussion, at least on the Good Place subreddit, is that it's also the font that's used in the opening of the series when Eleanor wakes up and sees everything is fine on the wall, which is probably a little bit more useful than the actual title card.
Right, exactly.
So after the title card plays, which again is really short, there's a little delightful little tinkling music in the background. But there's no actors credits or anything. It's just a what show are you watching and what chapter of that show are we looking at? We're back in the void, and Janet says that she can't change the appearance of the humans, so she did the next best thing, which is to put them all into clothing that they have worn in past episodes.
I can't put the humans back in their own bodies, so I've done the next best, but still not that great, thing. A high neck sleeveless? I suppose this outfit will do.
Are you sure? I mean, wearing a floral print to an infinite void at this time of the nothing?
So where are we exactly? We're not on Earth, right?
That's correct, Cheaty Janet. You're not.
Your real bodies dematerialized when you entered my void, and your essences reconstituted themselves in this form. Cool. And when you say void, I mean a subdimension outside of space and time, at the nexus of consciousness and matter, tethered to my essence. Does that help? It does not help. Makes it way worse. I just want to lie down. Where is down? I found it. It's up here. It's dope.
Michael shares that the Void has access to the Janet. So we're moving the plot along here. Michael reveals that the Void has access to the Janet warehouse. If they go through that, they can get to central accounting and they can figure out how the bad place is gaming the system. Yeah. But Janet lays out the stakes. The humans are technically dead now, but they weren't immediately sent to the good place or the bad place. So they're interdimensional fugitives. So they can't leave the Void.
Yeah. The Void, by the way, it is like entirely white, but I do like the addition. I think it is very important. I think the director, Morgan Sackett, said it, where it was like, we can't just do this whole thing in just this white space. It's not going to work. So they do like intentionally add some furniture. So they're like in a living room for a little bit. Eventually they're in like a classroom, but it's always like furniture set in the white space. So it's never any illusion that we're anywhere else, or they literally are just putting props in this white space that they're filming in, but it does like help having this little anchor there. I think it does make a world of difference, honestly, just having a little anchor for the characters to be like actually interacting with something or sitting in something or feel like they're in a place, even if they literally are in a void and not in a place, you know. It's a smart detail that I think is really important for pulling this off.
And that immediately follows a joke about like, where is down? And Jason's on the ceiling and he says, I found down, it's up here. And so original recipe Janet blinks in some furniture so that there is not only something interesting for us as the viewer to look at, but there's something to center where the characters are, because it seems like up and down, left and right don't really mean the same thing in the void that they mean for us.
Right. So we first get our first taste of D'Arcy Carden being everybody.
So good.
So talking a little, she of course has talked extensively about that experience. She did say that, you know, she had like 4 months of preparation, but she was like, if they did tell me you're just doing this tomorrow and I had no prep, I would still know what to do because I know these characters so well and I know these actors so well. So, which I believe her. They're spending a lot of time together. But even though she said that, she still did spend those 4 months having a lot of preparation and doing a lot of work for it, I think.
Yeah.
For pulling it off. Yeah. I think you put in a quote from the Good Place podcast where she was talking about it and said that they did actually, which I think this is pretty common for a lot of times when actors have to like do body swaps or whatever, but they would like have recorded video footage of how they'd play the scenes that she would be playing. So she would like refer the hell out of it, she says.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they'd have recorded audio from the table read so she could like actually listen to like how they said these words and enunciate it and stuff like that.
Yeah. And she shared this story on the podcast that she would listen to it in her car, and it was all she listened to the week beforehand was the table read. And one time she just kept it on like full volume, I guess the way we all do. And at one point in time she was driving, I think it was down Sunset Boulevard, and she saw William Jackson Harper and she was listening to his voice, and she rolled down the window and pulled up next to him. And he said, or in the story that she's telling, he said, oh no, you're losing your mind. Which probably like it's a lot of prep to do, to sell it the way that it's sold. And everyone does have these unique way of saying things. And we'll get to it when, Cheaty Janet is listing moral philosophers, and anytime he says a person's name in the past 3 years, he has this really unique emphasis, almost a little bit like Oprah welcoming a guest on. It's a little downplayed, but like David Hume. And you'll see that she delivers that when she lists them as Cheaty Janet later. Yeah,
she said that playing Cheaty was the hardest one.
No doubt.
Yeah, because she said like Cheaty and Eleanor were the two hardest, and I think which makes sense, right? Because it's like, I mean, Tahani, it's like you're kind of posh and British. Like obviously there's more to it, but like you have something to anchor onto very easily with her. Yeah. You know, Jason he has
stupid.
Well, and he has such a very particular way of saying words.
Yeah.
That like I think out of the four of them, he probably is the easiest to just imitate. You know, if you want to dig deeper into it, you can. But like you could do a Jason imitation, I think, very easily just from the way he enunciates stuff, and the pace of his language and stuff. But like Kristen Bell's acting often is really subtle. I think you know, like the stuff that she does, like when I was reading like stuff that she would be emulating, it wasn't necessarily saying certain words. Most of the time, it would just be like, "Are you putting your hands in your back pockets as you say this line?" Or like if it was dialogue, it would be like saying "get" instead of "get." Like the smallest little pieces of things that you'd have to find for it. That was challenging. But you said with like Cheaty, like I think because William Jackson Harper isn't really playing like that exaggerated of a character. It's kind of hard to emulate it. So it's sort of like you can sort of hear him saying those lines in your head, but actually like copying that is a whole different ballgame because you're not William Jackson Harper.
Yeah.
And I can totally see that because like, yeah, he's the least cartoonish, I think, out of the four of them. So it is kind of hard to just play another person. I think she ultimately pulls it off, but I totally can see how like it probably took a lot of work to really make your mouth make the same sounds that he does, like literally, you know?
Yeah. We've also got to give a nod to Kristen Mann, who was the costumer for the series. Because not only are these outfits created for Carden, but because the humans show up later in the episode as their actor selves. So they have to be costumed the exact same way, even though these are not the same costumes. People have different sizes. And so there had to be 2 separately created appropriate costumes for all of these folks that mirrored outfits that they would have been wearing other times in the season. So you, the viewer, knew who they were when they were D'Arcy Carden.
Yeah, that's that. I didn't even think about that, but that is such a good point. Yeah, and they're good look. They're not like simple outfits too. Like they're all nice fashionable outfits too. So like they have to look good in them. And you know what? D'Arcy Carden looks good in every single one of those outfits. It's kind of amazing how well she pulls off every single one of them.
So hot. She
pulls
as
off
every single one of these characters.
She pulls off the windbreaker. She pulls off the sweater vest. Like it's just A+ all around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you know, while we're naming staff members, I didn't list off the director and writers, which, you know, whatever. I sometimes forget that in episodes of the podcast, but I really wanted to get the writer credits because of the note that you have for one of the writers personally. Because directed by Morgan Sackett, who we mentioned, you know, he's directed on like Parks and Rec, Veep, and Hacks, lots of recent stuff. It's written by Josh Siegel and Dylan Morgan, who worked together on a lot of projects like Monk, Unbreakable Kimmy Shit. Oh my God. Mangled all of that. The Incredible Kimmy Shit is the new show that I love created. The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and also the Saved by the Bell reboot. But
listen,
yeah. I
Derek,
have the same thought. No, I remember watching the show before I knew he was a writer on the show and having the same thought. Don't worry.
Listen, y'all keep doing this where you got this hot guy. He's a comedy writer for the show. Maybe he writes some serious stuff too. Maybe he gets recognized for it and wins awards. And then you cast him on the show to play sort of an idiot or a bad guy. And I fall in love with him. So Josh Siegel plays Glenn in a couple episodes of The Good Place. He is a demon. He's sort of inept, and I can fix him and love him and make him better.
He's a beautiful man. Isn't it at one point?
Beautiful.
Doesn't he get like disintegrated or something like that?
He does. He turns into goo, and then they keep him as goo in a little container, and I would even love that goo because Glenn was so excellent. I loved Glenn.
Oh man. Yep, he's a beautiful man. I agree.
Yeah, and talented, because this is, of course, and all of his episodes are really well written. He's a very funny guy.
Yeah.
So we're out of the void now. You already talked about this, but there's sort of 2 parallel environments that we're going to be working in. One is Janet's void, and the other is central accounting. So Michael and Janet arrive in central accounting and interact with a neutral Janet.
Is that a good Janet or a bad Janet?
That's a neutral Janet. She's sort of the black sheep of the Janet world. Or blank sheep, I guess. Ooh, I can throw shade now. That's cool. You've arrived at the accounting office. All point calculations for actions taken on Earth are made here. End of conversation.
My name is Michael. I need to speak with the head accountant on official Good Place business.
I will inform the head accountant of your presence, and he either will or will not see you in a certain amount of time. End of conversation.
She's sort of like is happy for a moment because she's now able to throw shade, and like that's a developed skill for Janet. They request a meeting with the head accountant, which neutral Janet responds with nothing. Nothing at all, and then ends her conversation with end of conversation. Michael and Janet turn to see a wanted poster of the 4 humans that says wanted for processing, has their pictures, and says please alert management for any information about these interdimensional fugitives. Janet's not feeling well because the humans are inside her void, and she burps, but the burp turns into a clip from Cher's Believe, which is a consequence of them being there in the void.
Beautiful. What a great song choice.
Oh,
just
great.
Perfect. And the fact that I'm sure that they paid, you know, a ridiculous amount of money just for that one like 3-second sound clip from Cher.
But like, again, worth it because it really, really sells the absurdity of what's going on. Carden had actually recorded herself singing Believe. But they went with the Cher version because I think it sells the sort of otherworldliness a lot more.
It's funnier. It's a lot funnier, I think, if it's actually Cher. Yeah.
So Derek, you know, I love a background joke, so I paused and looked at this bulletin board. Not a ton to say here. On the left, there's a memo that's in some afterlife language that I don't know. But below it, somebody made a smiley face out of pushpins, so every office is sort of the same. On the right, there is a memo from Matt, who we will meet later. And it seems to be indicating that he has requested immediate suicide again. And we'll learn a little bit more about why that's happening later. But otherwise, you can't really make out what's going on with those. So probably some in-jokes with the prop department, but nothing we can see on the screen.
Funny that they tease that ahead of time, for sure.
Yeah, it's a nice little get.
Yeah. Well, back in the void, this is when the humans are kind of coming to terms with being there. Chidi Janet is freaking out, of course, understandable. And Eleanor Janet attempts to help him by conjuring a puppy with her, quote, bitching Janet powers. Which, you know what, if you could just like summon puppies with your mind, sounds pretty rad to me.
I would do it.
I would do it. And Janet does, of course, come back to warn them, hey, don't summon things. That's actually going to cause this whole void you're in to collapse if you just randomly summon stuff, which, of course, they're going to keep doing throughout the episode.
This is nuts. We're in a void in the body of a white lady.
Not a lady.
Not a lady, darling. But we are white. Let's all say white people things. Billy Joel. I found it on Etsy. There was nowhere to park. Did you refill the Brita? I find this void quite calming, actually. It's like, this time the Xanax took me. Oh, I have the worst stomachache. Dude, relax. Here, let me see if I can figure this out. Oh, wow, Eleanor, how'd you do that? I don't know. We're Janet's now, so I thought we'd have some bitchin' Janet powers. What just happened? What did you do? Sorry, I'm just trying to help Chidi calm down. The structural integrity of this void is already at risk. You can't start randomly conjuring up objects, or it might shatter the void. Yes, it might. It might make everything blow up and we'll all disappear forever. So stop it!
They really don't treat Janet very, very well in this episode. They kind of are very, like, she is really sacrificing everything to help them, and they're just like, no, we're just gonna summon shit constantly all over the place and watch this place crumble. But people are selfish. It's okay. I also this is the I think this is a sequence where, like, as they're coming to terms with, like, oh, we're like a white lady. Well, she's not a lady, but we are white. And so that's when Manny's like saying white people things.
Let's say white people things.
It is so on point, though.
Oh, it's so
I'm
great.
like, I've said everything. I have to refill the Brita constantly.
Refill the
Brita
is such a good one.
I literally have 2 Britas that I fill up regularly. It's like, it's so on point. It's so good.
I found it on Etsy.
Yep.
I found it on Etsy. Let's refill the Brita. Yeah, it's great. It's a great line.
Every gift I've ever given to people came from Etsy. So, it's true. It's very on point. Yep. And being in the void, this time the Xanax took me.
The Xanax took me. But again, it's in that affected accent. So you're getting, again, that sense that we're talking about Tahani here. We're talking about this woman who thinks so highly of herself that she would say this, and not in like a Karen Walker, I'm taking drugs way, but a very like, I'm high society and this is what we do.
Yeah, of course. We all take Xanaxes regularly. It makes sense.
But we go back to Central Accounting, and Michael and Janet meet with Neil, who's played by Stephen Merchant, who's the head accountant. And Michael shares his concerns. He thinks that the bad place is cooking the books, but Neil is certain that's not happening. And Michael asks for a tour around accounting, and Neil agrees to do that.
Yeah. They have a fun little nod to him, Stephen Merchant, having created the office, the original UK office, because he's holding a mug that says "Existence's Greatest Boss." Obviously, You know the reference. But apparently, like, he didn't even hold it right when they were filming it, so like you wouldn't have been able to read it. So they had to actually like digitally add the print in so viewers could see it, because they were that committed to that joke.
It's a good joke, but like, I'm sure we're going to be talking about David Niednagel at some point in time, but the VFX on this episode and the series in general are fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think anyone who's like hired on to like a 20-minute sitcom on NBC would have expected to be doing the amount of VFX that this show has to do on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and he gets a little named appearance later in season 3 when an interdimensional being wraps itself around Tahani's neck, and they say, "Oh, don't disturb the Niednagel," or the Niednagel.
Oh, I never caught that. That's great.
Yeah,
that
was
rules.
a nod to him.
Yeah, it's, you know what, this episode already probably very expensive. What's, pasting a few words on a mug gonna cost you at that point, comparably, right? So makes sense.
So if you don't know Stephen Merchant from The Office, you've probably encountered him in some other place. One of my favorite roles that he has is as the sort of butler when a Modern Family does its like toe dip into French farce. And he is like the driving force of those 2 episodes that are like the exact same episode, down to Stephen Merchant being the plot driver of farce. But he also plays Wheatley in Portal 2, which is the little robot that tells you where to go. And he's so funny.
He's so good. I feel like, would I be off base if I say that Portal 2 is kind of underrated? Like, it definitely got like acclaim, but I feel like, I don't know, it didn't really stick in pop culture like I really feel like it should have. But that game is good, especially having to be a sequel to Portal that is also a bigger game, that is kind of like a very different game. It's so good, and it pulls it off so well.
The writing is so good. It is laugh out loud. If you have not played Portal 2 since it came out, you're really doing yourself a crime. It is a fantastic script. You could just watch it on YouTube. You don't have to play it again, because some of us are really, really bad at thinking 3-dimensional spaces, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I kind of do want to play it again. I have not played it since I got it. So
I would offer to play co-op with you, but I just revealed that I'm not very good.
It's fine. I mean, I play everything on easy mode, so it's fine. I get it. But back in the void, we get some good philosophy stuff starting up here.
Eleanor, how'd you know I always wanted to talk like this? Funny story, it's one of the things I saw in the alternate timeline where we were soulmates on and off for 300 years. Maybe we should talk about that? Well, I suppose we can, but there's not that much to talk about. The things you saw weren't part of my life, so they didn't happen to me. The hell are you talking about, man? Of course it was you. I saw it. Well, it was a Chidi, sure, but it wasn't me, Chidi. This is a classic philosophical question, the concept of the self, or who we are, philosophically speaking. There's the Chidi I am, who lived a certain life, and there's the Chidi you saw, your soulmate or whatever, who had some entirely different life. Not the same Chidis. I'm so sorry. Yeah. No, I get it. Counterpoint. That's the dumbest thing you've ever said, and you do not deserve a puppy.
Because Eleanor Janet is like talking about this shared history that she and Chidi had over the centuries, right? And I think an important thing to remember, that a very important plot point with this episode is that, like we talked about it earlier, there's lots of mind wipes and reboots that have happened over the course of the show, which is a thing that happens in many types of media. Many comic books have plenty of reboots, but what I love about this show is that I think it really actually deals with like the philosophical consequences of realizing that there are like alternate timeline versions of yourself in a way that I don't think really gets talked about a lot. It's a thing that's honestly has like bothered me a lot in like having been a comic book fan and fan of superhero media especially, but also sci-fi in general, is that like so many stories are sort of like, here's an alternate universe. Here's like, we changed the timeline, we rebooted the timeline. Here's your next crisis on infinite whatevers. Even like Fringe had a story arc where they have like a timeline that's sort of like a timeline shift that like resets people's personalities and stuff. And it's like, that stuff can be really interesting, but I do think like it always gets me thinking of like, yeah, but like, I don't, just because this is the same, looks like the same character, or it's being played by the same actor, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same character if they haven't had their same life experiences, right? Or is that the case? I don't know. And like, that's exactly the question that this episode directly deals with, of like, okay, you, Eleanor Janet, have obtained the memories of the past lives that you have lived with me, Chidi, and we were soulmates in those other past lives. But me, Chidi, now is not the same Chidi that you lived with, because I don't have those same memories. I wasn't living through those experiences, and you might have those memories, but I don't. Therefore, I am not the same Chidi. Therefore, we are not soulmates here. Yeah. Even if another version of me was soulmates, which Eleanor is like, well, that's fucking stupid. Shut up.
Yeah, but he straight up rejects her. He's like, nope, that wasn't me. We're not soulmates, because I couldn't be that person.
Yeah.
And Eleanor Janet gets so frustrated with him that she attempts to remove his puppy, but only makes more puppies, and says, I'm making things cuter when what I want is for things to be less cute.
Yeah. And like I love it too because it is such a great distillation of that argument, right? Like because both sides, neither side is really wrong in the scenario. Like Chidi is right. He did not live those lives. That is not that Chidi that he was is not the Chidi that he is now. But Eleanor's also right where it's sort of like, yeah, but to me, you're the same guy. Like to people on the outside, you are the same person. And the things that I saw in you, the things that I saw in that version of you still apply to you now, even if you don't have the exact same life as that version did. You know, to me, the core of you is still the same. And like that is like the core philosophical argument of this episode. Also put in the context of neither of them being themselves because they are in the facade of a Janet right now. So yeah, it's so smartly done.
It is so wildly intelligent. And this is the sort of thing that like if you took an intro to philosophy class in college, or you just smoked a lot of weed in college, like you have thought about these things because these are the sort of things that they challenge you on. And it's funny because Chidi seems to be falling into like a very easy answer to this. Like, oh, I don't remember you, therefore you're not the person that I fell in love with. And like an intro to philosophy class would be like, well, if you were soulmates and married to someone 50 years and they got Alzheimer's and couldn't remember who you are they not your soulmate anymore? Like that's a pretty intro to philosophy, like challenge to get you to think differently about things. So it's weird for Chidi, who's usually like the kind of person who's like, well, you might be my soulmate or you might not be my soulmate. And so I think what we're also seeing here is that he is trying to protect himself, and that's why he's sort of rejecting this notion.
He's deflecting like through the sort of philosophical concept, which is a thing that like, which is also like very real. That's a thing that anyone does in real life, right? Like if you don't want to, I mean, probably so many of the decisions that we make, good or bad, maybe, are just sort of us like not wanting to acknowledge that we're going to die someday, you know,
100%.
like. So it's smartly done character wise, because it also is very in character for him to sort of like run away from problems like that in one way or another.
100%.
Yeah.
But we bump over back to Central Accounting. Neil is taking Michael and Janet to the main feed and explaining how points are assigned and how hacking would be absolutely outside of the question. So an undefined action is discovered, and Neil explains how point values are determined for new behaviors.
Richard Moore of Sugarland, Texas, hollowed out an eggplant and filled it with hot sauce and nickels.
And amazingly, it's not a weird sex thing. 99% of all new human behaviors are weird sex things, but not in this. Oh, no, it is a weird sex thing. Yeah. Well, then we zip that over to the relevant departments. In this case, Anastasia in the stuffed vegetable department. We've got Hector over in American coins, and my dear buddy Matt in weird sex things.
I'm still waiting on a response to the request I filed for immediate suicide.
Request denied. I love Matty. He's hilarious.
During this scene, we meet Matt, who is responsible for assigning points to, quote, weird sex things, which Neil claims is 99% of all new human behavior. And this is where we get the joke, like, have you considered my request for immediate suicide? And the head accountant says, nope, denied.
That I don't know what the name of that actor is, but like he does in such a short time does such a good job of conveying the sheer like exhaustion and the fact that he is at his core just a destroyed person from all the horrors that he's seen and the trauma that has been inflicted on him
100%.
by doing his job. And I'm also like, I've worked jobs like that too. So
But on top of it all, he's just in a little cubicle, as they all are. We see a couple of the cubes fly by before this scene gets started, including someone who's responsible for borrowing, and then in parentheses, money, someone who's responsible for impressions, in parentheses, Borat, and someone who's responsible for songs with specific dance instructions.
Oh my God. Yeah. Which I'm sure, I mean, are those negative or positive points? Probably. I don't know, actually.
Who would know? And we need to talk about the point system, Derek. So how do you feel? What do you think about this? Like, this isn't probably how the afterlife works. I think we just cease to be. But what do you think about this? Like what's sort of your read on the point system?
I think it is. I think it's cool. I think it's smart for this show to have this type of I mean, obviously it's like core to the central concept of it, but even when they were conceiving of the show and the idea of being the afterlife, you know, they still have to come up with some way to judge it. And I think having a point system makes a lot of sense for what they're doing, because so much of the construction of the afterlife in this show is very bureaucratic and like a commentary on office culture as much as it is a commentary on philosophy, right? So I think, you know, the way that I think that this show has so much commentary on the way that the world works in our present day, everything that we do has to be so transactional now. You know, the way that everything works is so transactional. There's a credit score is literally just a point system for, you know, living as a human financially. So like, I think it makes a lot of sense for their version of the afterlife. And also is something that like, I think the way that they handle it is really well done, because at the outset of the show, when things seem to just be like totally fine and hunky dory, it's like, oh yeah, I guess a point system makes sense if they're really good at it. Sure. Like there's things that are good and things that are bad. And, you know, but then it's smart because the more you dig into it, the more you realize how flawed a system like that is, because it all is really based in a gray area that like a certain action is objectively good and a certain action is objectively bad. And no matter how much you try to balance that with different points, like it's never really going to like actually deal with the like ambiguity of what it is to be human, you know? So I think the rigidity of it as the show goes along is more and more exposed as being flawed, which, you know, at this point in the show, we haven't really gotten to like the actual realities of why it's built like it is, but like, it is justified the more you go along. Like, yeah, the system it maybe made sense at one point in time, but the more complicated life gets, the more of the rigidity of a point system, it doesn't make sense the way that we live life. And it's just such a great like commentary on like morality and the way that we operate in life, you know, now. And I mean, just the fact that we still have to operate under, I don't know why, but I feel like there's probably some commentary on capitalism in there too, probably. I guess just the transactional nature of everything.
Yeah, the judge straight up says it at the end of season 3 that like there's just no way to be ethical in consumption. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's a joke that I know gets thrown around when somebody wants to buy something that they know is evil.
Yeah. But it's not true.
Well, there is no ethical consumption in capitalism, and there's not, but...
Yeah, it's also, like, it's true, though. It's a true statement. Yeah. That's why it became a joke, because it's just, there's nothing you can do about it.
You gave a really honest and beautiful answer, but I'm going to give the one Megan Amram gave when somebody asked her about the point system, and she says, oh, to me, it's just a way to slip jokes into the background of the show.
Well, I mean, they fucking do. They nail it.
Yeah. So I went through to try to find some that I thought were really interesting, and one of my favorite ones was... that every minute you spend self-monitoring potentially nauseating mouth sounds while chewing earns you 762.33 points.
Wow. Okay,
and I just think that's so nice. That's just so nice. The other one I flagged that showed up in one of the first episodes was 224 points for beginning to compose a social media post about David Bowie dying and then thinking the world doesn't need to hear my thoughts about David Bowie dying.
That is how I operate on social media. Like that is like my core like ethos of operating on social media. I think that is like the mentality you have to adopt to have a not terrible relationship with social media. Yeah. I think it's worth way more points than 224 though.
Derek, that buys you being boorish at the opera 3 times. Like you could trade that off.
True. I think my favorite one is helping a hermit crab find a new shell. I love
that. It's so cute.
Yeah, that's so real.
Yeah, and I will say that even though one of the things we see on the introduction slides of like what people did to earn or lose points, one of them was end slavery, to which earns you 814,000 points. Later we'll learn that Abraham Lincoln did not go to the good place, so that was not enough. For now, though, the hollowed out eggplant that was filled with hot sauce and nickels, which was a sex thing, is determined by the computer to lose 9.88 points. And that's how the head accountant, Neil, knows that there's nothing wrong with the system. So Michael asks... Can we just take a look at one person? I just want to see who is going on. And he asked for the file of Doug Forsett, who has been named a few times in the season or in the series. He's actually introduced in the first episode. There's a picture of him up in Michael's office. He is the guy who figured out the point system after getting really high on mushrooms one night. And Janet and Michael went to visit an adult Doug Forsett, who is living his life purely and cleanly, which is why they'd like to see his record.
It was Michael McKean that played him, right?
Oh my God, he was so good.
Yeah, I didn't watch the episode before this last night. I meant to, but That was, yeah, I remember that episode being very, very good.
He's
'cause
so
it's kind of
good.
a surprise because it's always just been like a background joke of the Doug Forsythe guy
Yeah.
from the first episode. And then to just like him to show up in person and then like be exposed as being very miserable for trying so hard to be a good person is really fascinating.
Yeah, he's so good at it, especially if you, like me, happen to be watching this while you were watching Better Call Saul, where he's in a much different role.
Yeah. I love Michael McKean. He is
so good.
One of the best. One of my faves. Yeah, I am thinking this won't be a tangent, but it is interesting that like a lot of the weird sex stuff loses you points when it's like, I don't know, like filling an eggplant with nickels and hot sauce. Like that's not hurting anybody.
Who is not hurting? Who is not hurting?
Yeah, so like, I
Because
mean,
presumably he's putting his penis in it, right? Like that's,
right. That's
yeah.
Yeah, or yeah. As long as because they don't specify that he's doing it with another person or sticking it on someone forcibly or whatever.
Yeah.
That'd be the only reason they would lose points. So really, I mean, the afterlife is kind of like very sex negative in some ways. Like they're just being kind of judgy towards people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, lots of signs that the point system is just very deeply flawed. I think we should publish your list that you compiled on social media somehow.
All I did was take a couple screenshots from the Netflix and tried to copy down the points. But yes, we are more than able to put it up there.
Yeah. I think that's very important, actually. Yeah. So back in the void, Eleanor Janet makes the case to Chidi Janet why they know each other and her feelings for him. And she's also extremely bisexual because doing this, she's sort of like, because she's talking about like, oh, don't you want to know what it was like to hit this? Well, not this, because I'm not my own body, but I would hit this. Like, this is fucking great. She's like literally looking at her own boobs. It's fucking great.
And it is a long-standing, like, Eleanor Shellstrop is bisexual. Like this is not even me just joking. Like she is a canon bisexual woman.
Yeah, she's hitting on women constantly. Every hot woman,
constantly.
She is the first person to comment on how hot they are. Yeah. But yeah, Chidi Janet, is continuing to kind of push back on it, and in this case, doing it by teaching everyone about the concept of the self, even like conjuring a blackboard and school desks. Like, is going so far to just turn this into a whole lesson about no, I am not in love with you, and here's philosophically and ethically why I couldn't be.
Conceptions of the self. Let's start with John Locke, who believed that personal identity was based on having a continued consciousness, essentially. Memory. Memories are links in a chain that together form a single self. If I can't remember what happened, because it happened to a Chidi from another timeline, it's not a unified me. Just because you don't remember doing something doesn't mean you didn't do it. I have no idea how it happened, but there is definitely a tattoo on my butt that says Jason. That brings us to Derek Parfit. It does? Parfit said, even if I have memories from an earlier time, that doesn't necessarily mean it was me. After all, if my brain was split in two and each half was put in a different person, which one is me? All I know is that other Chidi doesn't exist anymore, and this one does. So this must be the real Chidi. And all I know is that you're just barfing Wikipedia all over everyone to avoid talking about your feelings.
I mean, it is, what the core of this conversation is, like we were talking about. It is the question of which is the real self. It's just very funny that, like, the ultimate reason he's doing this is to have the question of, well, all these philosophers say that this is my real self and that self is not real me. Therefore, we cannot kiss. That's the only reason.
Right, exactly. So it can't possibly be me who's your soulmate of all time forever. And again, it's almost like they lifted a scene from Chidi teaches his fellow humans about moral philosophy, down to the point that he lists another philosopher, Parfit, and says, this leads us to Parfit's work. And Tahani goes, it does, which she has already done in like season 1 when they are all learning moral philosophy together.
Yeah. Except now it's D'Arcy Carden reenacting everything.
Exactly. Even if you're not into philosophy, you should look at some of Parfit's work because he was highly influenced by Star Trek. So he's a modern philosopher. And he asked a lot of questions about what would happen if you, this was plots to many episodes of TNG and Voyager. What would happen if instead of being teleported, you were duplicated? Because it's essentially what the technology is doing is destroying you in one place and rebuilding you someplace else.
I hate that idea. I would never go into a Star Trek teleporter.
No, me
It
neither.
scares
No,
the hell
I'd be
out of
one of those people that they're like, ugh, just take the transporter. And I'd be like, shuttle, thank you.
Yeah, nope. I agree. That's the case where I'm like, I agree with Sheedy. That would not be me anymore. That would just end myself. Like the only way it will make sense if there's a way for your consciousness to move from one body to the other, which could be the reality, but I don't know for sure. So I'm not taking that risk.
Yeah. And it's funny because Parfit was like an early Trek nerd. And so he was sort of ostracized for talking about this at academic conferences. And now it is like the soup du jour. Like people just talk about this as if we have teleporters that are available just down the hall.
It's a fascinating conversation. That's and that's what like Star Trek and sci-fi is for, is to have those conversations. So those people were dumb and bad, and I'm glad that he got validated later on.
He did. He's also the reason that we have a lot of discourse about the ship of Theseus. So if you were a WandaVision viewer, or you were on Twitter when WandaVision came out, you were exposed to a lot of ship of Theseus discourse. Which is just about asking about the self, except it's what we leave to the world, not who we are in the moment.
Yeah, I've always liked that. I was into Ship of Theseus before it was cool, long before WandaVisions. I thought it was kind of exciting that they were like diving into that so directly in like an MCU thing, and then everybody got mad about it because they get mad about everything on the internet. But it's it makes sense that it would come up in this conversation. So yeah, I mean they're bringing out all the greatest hits for this one.
Yeah, seriously, if listeners just want to grab a pack of cloves and meet us on the corner later, we'll talk about like the true meaning of life and what we're all doing here together.
Like I think about that stuff. I've thought about stuff a lot lately. So maybe I don't know if that means that rewatching if that's a good or a bad time to rewatch The Good Place. Actually,
it's always a good time. I will say we didn't mention it at the top, but Michael Schur actually, because of all the moral philosophy he learned for this, the consultants he did, he wrote a book called How to Be Perfect.
I have not read it.
It's actually very good. The audiobook's very good, I should say. I didn't read the physical book.
It's the same.
The words are the same. I don't know why I'm being so coy here. It was good. It's a good read or a good listen, and it is about how we act in the world and what's the point of doing any of it, especially if you don't believe in God.
Yeah, I will definitely have to check that out. I like that. So where are we now? We are back in Central Accounting. Neil pulls up the Book of Dougs to find Doug Forset's file, reveals that even this guy who's been living altruistically to the point that he's like miserable because he's been such a good person, with full knowledge of the point system, even he apparently hasn't earned enough points for his age. He would never earn enough points by the time of his death to get into the good place, which doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense at all. But the accountant says, no, this is right. Like, it's been true ever since the beginning. And he goes over to this wall and it's got a picture of a caveman giving another caveman a rock. And he says, like, look, this is the first act of human kindness. Og gave Grog a rock and earned 10,000 points. And then they pan over and immediately Grog used the rock to club Og over the head and lost 700,000 points.
This show's so good.
Derek, if there was a book of Derek's, who are you doing better than? Or who are you behind? See, I couldn't even think of other Derek. I could think of Derek Jeter, and I only know that name because of 30 Rock.
Yeah, literally, Derek Jeter was the first name I thought of.
Well, you're doing better than Derek Jeter.
I assume that I am. I don't know anything about him, but I just assume that he's probably a bad person because he's a rich guy.
Yeah.
The only other famous Derek, I can't remember what his last name is, but he's the one who did the Magic Act, the Magic Show. On that I watched on Hulu. I think it was called In and Out, maybe.
Was he a magician? I think you would lose to a magician.
Yeah, I think he's because his show is really good. Like, it's a really heartfelt, one of the most unique things that you'll ever see and can possibly change your life if you watch it at the right time. I think that he's doing better than me. God, I'm mad that I don't remember his last name though. I think it starts with a D. I think it's like Derek something, like not Derek to Blah, but something like that. I literally can't think of any other Dereks that aren't fictional. So
Right.
I guess I'm doing pretty good, maybe.
So I'm going to compete against freaking David Nienagel, who did all the VFX for this. He's doing way better than I am.
Yeah, you're kind of screwed. There's way more
I
Davids.
am.
My dad's also a David. You may or may not be doing better than him. I don't know.
Okay, well, I don't know about that.
Maybe you're on equal playing ground.
As long as I'm beating David Rose, I'm happy.
Sure.
I'll take a fictional David for my comparison. Okay, so we're back in the void, and we're still at the blackboard. Janet is diving into David Hume, one of my favorite philosophers. But Janet comes back to tell them, you gotta stop destabilizing the void, gang. And Janet apologizes, thinking that it's the blackboard. But no, we pan over, and the bigger offender is Jason Janet, who has conjured his friend Pillboy, played by Eugene Cordero, into Pillboy's broken hot tub.
I didn't mean to conjure Pillboy. I was just thinking about how much fun we used to have hanging out in his broken hot tub. And then he showed up.
Yeah, I was just chilling, being nothing. Then all of a sudden, I was.
Oh. Goodbye, Pillboy.
Ah, Dip. I'm not a
And a great line from Eugene Cordero, who is on the screen for like 15 seconds, but he says, I was sitting there being nothing, and then I suddenly was. It's fantastic. He is great. He is just a breath of fresh air. He's in this is one of those things like you're watching the X-Files and you're like, oh my God, there's a person who's been in every episode of television ever. Eugene Cordero's in a lot of TV. And once you see him in The Good Place and you know to look for him, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
Janet banishes them, and there's a great departing "Oh Dip" by Pillboy.
He says, "Oh Dip, I'm not again," which is so smart. I love that line so much.
And it's funny because it's one of those like you almost have to have the subtitles on to get the
you
joke.
wouldn't know what he said. Yeah,
because it kind of goes by really quickly. But again, it's the idea that he was nothing, and then he was something, and then oh no, I'm not again.
So good.
It's great, and the VFX shot of him cubing away is really cool.
Yeah, it's really well done.
When I would, speaking of other Davids in the world, when I would speak for work, I would use David Hume because he had some really like applicable philosophies about how we build better societies. And one of his big things that I'll paraphrase, because we're both Davids and I'm allowed to do that, was that you can't build what ought to be, only using what is. This notion that in order to think about a better world, we have to sort of expand the way in which we're thinking about who we are in it and how we'll build it. It was pretty cool.
Huh. Yeah, that is really fascinating.
He was also really hot.
Oh, well, hey, that works. I think I read some of his stuff in my philosophy classes in college, I think. If I remember correctly. I know of his stuff. So if I didn't read it then, I have read some of his stuff before. Yeah, that's a very cool connection.
Yeah.
So back in Central Accounting, yet again, Janet's kind of impressing on Michael. Hey, my void's destabilizing, so we need to like hurry this shit up, okay? Michael's pressing Neil to ask him when the last person got into the good place, which leads to a very big reveal that no one has been admitted into the good place in 521 years, which is like a huge reveal for this show as a whole, that like the concept of heaven, literally no one's ever been good enough to get in it in half a century, which is like a bananas thing that like the show has to deal with for the whole rest of its run.
Yeah.
So, and they dropped this in this episode that's already like got a lot of stuff going on in it. Like this is another one of those game changer episodes, because suddenly the whole mission of the show changes pretty radically, because now it is like something is wrong with our system fundamentally, like that we have to do something about. And it starts with that reveal, which is really wild and like kind of unexpected. I think the clues are there when you think about it. There's even like in this episode, like they show a giant batch of reports going down to the bad place while nothing are going up to the good place. Like the clues are there in the show, so it makes a lot of sense. But to have it spelled out for you is pretty wild.
So I did do the math. 521 years ago from the airing of the episode would be 1495, and I attempted to look up who would have been notable enough for the writers to use, because I just can't believe that it would be random.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find any cited source. The best person I could find who was famous and real tenuous as when they get into the good place was John II of Portugal, who was admired as one of the greatest monarchs of his time. Already sus, because why would you let a king go in? But whatever. He was posthumously named the perfect prince because of how fitting he fit to Machiavelli's The Prince and how Machiavelli thought royalty should act. And I think Machiavelli gets this name for being really like conspiratorial, but a lot of what he wrote about in The Prince, which I read because it was public domain and really boring, is about like how to treat people good. So this might have actually been a pretty good dude. He is playable in Civ 6, which I think deserves you going to the good place. But
what is Civ 6? I don't know what this is.
Sid Meier's Civilization 6. It's a strategy game where you play as a world leader.
No, I know what I have a friend who plays. I have at least one friend who plays this. Now it's okay. Yep, I know exactly what that is. I've never played it myself, and I don't think that I ever will. But it's cool that exists.
Yeah, I have 3,000 hours on lock on Steam on it. It is a great game. Yeah, but the scene ends with Janet raising the stakes again. She says, "I'm coming apart," and her skin is literally starting to break apart. And so we know that we've got to do something. We got to do something soon.
Yeah. So in the void that is on the verge of collapsing, Chidi and Janet Chidi, Janet, and what appears to be Jason Janet are talking on the couch.
Yo, homie. You and Eleanor were fighting before, and I couldn't help but overhear. Hey, if we hear with our ears, why is it called butt overhearing? Bro, if you don't like her, you should just tell her. It's not about whether I like Eleanor. I got into philosophy to try to make sense of a world that almost never makes sense, and that was before I learned that I died and then undied and then re-died. I just can't take one more thing. It's too much. I'm gonna tell you a story. Back in Jacksonville, there was this guy in my 80-person dance crew named Stank Toby. Hang on. It was a 60-person dance crew. Oh, Dip. What are numbers? You're not Jason Janet. You're Eleanor Janet pretending to be Jason Janet. That is so wrong and so confusing. What was I supposed to do, man? You wouldn't talk to me. This seemed like the only option. Hi, Chidi. I'm Eleanor. I'm Arizona Shrimp Horny. That's not what I sound like, Jason. Get out of here. Oh, Dip.
This is one of, it's a short little sequence, but it's one of the best, most ambitious sequences in this episode that doesn't involve visual effects.
Yeah.
Because Chidi catches on that actually Eleanor Janet was pretending to be Jason Janet. So essentially we have D'Arcy Carden playing Kristen Bell pretending to be Manny Jacinto.
Yeah.
It's
there. If you know it's there and you rewatch it because you're doing a podcast about it, you can see that.
Yeah.
You can see that it's wrong. And I don't know a better way to say it than that.
There's something a little bit. It's like a stilted version of what Manny Jacinto does, for one. And I think that you can tell from facial expressions, too. Because when Chidi is talking, normally I think Jason will just sort of blankly stare at them or just, be actively listening. And, with this, you can see that she's, looking and actively processing what he's saying and thinking, she's thinking of the next thing to say as Jason, right? She's not listening and then saying things off the cuff instinctively. She's trying to think of the next story to tell or think how would Jason respond to this. But you're only seeing this on D'Arcy Carden's face.
Yeah.
It is all completely in facial expressions and silent body language. And you only notice it if you're looking for it, right? It's such a tour de force performance in just this little nothing scene.
Yes.
It's not as it even really matter, this one little bit. It is all for a bit, but it's so ambitious and so well executed. And then you even get a little bit of Jason Janet in Eleanor Janet's clothes. So Jason is also just for fun pretending to be Eleanor. And my favorite bit about it is that D'Arcy Carden is upping the pitch of her voice. When men usually play women, they up the pitch, but D'Arcy Carden is a woman.
Right.
So she doesn't actually have to, but because Jason would do it instinctively, she has to do it to play Eleanor. It's fucking good.
So
good.
So good. I'm Eleanor. I'm Arizona Shrimp Horny. And it's funny because the stakes are really high in the episode. We're coming up to the absolute climax of the episode. And so you've got to, because it's a comedy, you've got to drop a joke like that in here. And it is the perfect appetite prep for what you're about to get with this relationship developing between Chidi and Eleanor.
Yeah, because what happens after that is like, because we have this sort of idea of like the void sort of collapsing, it's not necessarily immediately like everything is unstable. It's happening, including the characters, not just the space that they're in. So as Eleanor is sort of falling apart about like losing this chance to be with Chidi, she's also sort of like, why am I doing this though? Like I've never been the type of person that's going to be like chasing after a guy like a sick puppy dog or whatever. Right. Like, and that's true. Like that's not really the character that we've seen on the show up to this point. Like in a lot of ways, like she's recognizing to herself, like I'm acting out of character, and she's only doing that because she's in a situation where she's in a very bizarre situation where she has like 300 years worth of memories of being in love with a guy and then having to process it with the version of him that's not loving her. Like that, of course, that would fucking break your brain. Right. How do you process that? And so she like she's like essentially what it's distilled down to is her losing her sense of self. Like, I don't know who I am anymore. I've got all these memories of other versions of me that are not reflected in the other people that I'm around. They don't see that version of me, but I can see that version of them, but they're not that version of them. And I don't feel like I'm acting like me. So who am I? Yeah. So it's this entire identity crisis that's happening while she's also in the body of Janet, not herself. So she literally doesn't look like herself. And as that starts to break down, it's the full identity crisis is represented by her suddenly summoning like other versions of other people. So she just starts transforming into just random people that she may or may not have ever met in her life before. Right. Yeah. And
before we move on to the people who are these other Eleanors, I would just say to go back to the idea that this is sort of like a spiritual successor to Lost, is that Chidi is Eleanor's constant. Like this is the thing that she always ends up going back to for one reason or another. And they were originally made quote unquote soulmates as a way to torture each other. And then it has turned into something else. And so I think there's something to be said about this idea of a constant that our main character is trying to find in order to ground themselves. But without Chidi, she's really up a creek.
Yeah, that's such a good pull. I didn't think about that. Like, the more I think about the Lost connections, like, Lost also had a lot of philosophical conversations and two characters positioned on like two different sides of a philosophical argument and stuff happening representing it. Just like right now, Chidi and Eleanor are on two different sides of this philosophical argument about what is the self, and like the world around them is sort of crumbling because of this high concept their situation is in because of these two different sides that they can't agree on. Like, it's so, yeah, it really is. It really is just Lost 2.0 is what the good place is.
and you're right. Lost would have been better if Locke and the Doctor would have kissed at the end.
I mean, yes, absolutely. 100,000%. Yes.
I'm sorry. I forgot Michael Fox's character's name. I don't remember the Doctor's name.
Jack.
Jack.
Yes, yeah. How can you remember Jack?
Jack. We have to go back. That's all I really remember. I have seen Lost. I have not seen Lost more than once. So
sure. Yeah.
But so Eleanor's first transformation is into Monica Padman, who was an actor. And it's interesting. I looked up her background. She was a friend and assistant prior to being a nanny for Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. And she now co-hosts a podcast with Dax Shepard called Armchair Expert. So this was like somebody in the circle who scored this like first transformation.
That's so fun. I love that. I had no idea. Aww.
Yeah. But Chidi's freaking out because that's not Janet and that's not Eleanor. So what's going on here? And that takes us straight to a commercial break.
Heck yeah. It's a good one. It's a good weird twist for an already weird episode.
Yeah.
When we get back from the commercial break, Eleanor is continuing to transform, and she's just transforming into just random people.
This whole thing sucks, you know?
Eleanor, you're not...
The one thing I never wanted to do, ever for any reason, was to follow some guy around like a lame puppy dog. I mean, look at me. I don't need to do that. I can get any guy I want.
Eleanor, just... hang on.
What, dude? What? What do you want?
What is going on? Okay, well... this is bad.
Why are you staring at me? Do I have a zit on my nose or something?
Your sense of self is crumbling and it's taking the void down with it.
Great. So I don't feel like myself for 2 seconds and it breaks the universe?
who are some of these random transformations?
Yeah, so the first one,
all of them. Nice job.
Yeah, until they stopped listing them, because we're gonna get into the point where they're really just background. There's nothing wrong with being a background actor. It's awesome. I've done it. But Eleanor's second transformation after she's Monica Padman is into Michael Higuera. The third one is a child actor who mostly does stage. His name is Mac Jarman. The fourth one is a character actor, Carol Herman, who appeared in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, fun.
The fifth transformation is Lauren Spakes, who has a pretty solid IMDb history in short film.
Nice. So, yeah. It's fun, and then it's just a bunch of people.
Yeah. Then after that,
like
it's
a second.
I think there's one more that was named, but then it's just we just go, just constantly. But I'll just say the transition as they sort of cube up and down is so well done, and all of the actors are doing a good job. So it's just really incredible. It's a really strong impact.
They all got to pop in and be Kristen Bell for like one line at a time. That can't be easy.
Somewhere else in the void, though, we're following Tahani Janet and Jason Janet, where they find this sort of like master warehouse search engine of Janet's database. And Jason's really excited because he thinks it's a flat screen TV, and he asks for cartoons, which very, very relatable.
Yep.
And when it doesn't show cartoons, it just like looks up information about cartoons. He goes, no, cartoons for Jason. Well, that's the magic word. And that loads up Jason's file on this screen. And Tahani says like, wow, like Janet had a crush on you and you all were married in one of these like reboots. What's up with that?
Yeah. Again, there's sort of like this whole idea of bringing back these prior versions of themselves. And I do think that the comparison here with like how Eleanor and Chidi are dealing with like those memories versus Jason learning about also a relationship with Janet, like he doesn't forget about it. It's just sort of like, oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I think that's like, I mean, it's so telling, but it also is sort of like, it's good character writing for one, because that is how they would react. Yeah. But also like, it is sort of interesting because I think it's representative of how real life people would react depending on the type of people they are. Like there's a reason that some people get really anxious about philosophical conversations and thinking about death and the concept of that. And then while other people just like, don't think about it or don't care. It's just like, oh yeah, I guess it would suck if I die. Like, oh, you know, like and I've been on both sides of that. I feel like where it's like, there's certain elements of like, I'm not afraid of like dying necessarily, but I do get swept up and anxious about the idea of like, what is it to not exist? You know, like the higher concept version of that. And I just sort of think it's interesting that it's sort of like, that's represented in this show, that like, there are people who just like, the philosophy is like interesting, but like they're just living life. Like they're just
living life.
Truly like Zen and in the moment, like just living only in the present, like not really worried about what's going to happen. The higher questions of what's going to happen, because like, why does it really matter? You know, at the end of the day.
and that makes a lot of sense, honestly, because Jason's whole arc is sort of about hedonism. And so that really actually tracks, because there's a type of hedonistic nihilism where you're just sort of like, it doesn't matter what happens as long as I can be happy now. And that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. They pack a lot of stuff. I mean, they pack a lot of stuff in this show, but even this episode, like every little bit that happens is actually like, you know, playing into the larger concept that they have going on here. It's really well done.
Yeah. But we go back to Central Accounting, and Neil thanks Michael and Janet for their visit and invites them to his colleague's birthday. She's turning 29 million again. Nice little joke about how we hide our ages. But he has to quickly...
Or it's because time is not linear.
Well, yeah. We haven't gotten to that big reveal either, that we're in this Jeremy bear me, time means nothing situation. But Neil says he's got to run, because if he doesn't make it to the break room, he's not going to get a quarter piece of cake. Again, a nice little nod to like, well, no matter where you are, afterlife, real life, you're going to be in an office and there's going to be things that are true.
That's the most depressing aspect of this show, that like office culture is just like what other immortal beings have to live in. Like, oh my God, no wonder the system is so broken. Like that's the real hell, is the reality that's what it is.
It does set up, however, like an incredible moment later in the episode. But Michael is incredulous and he implores Neil to reconsider that something must be wrong, that nobody's gotten in for 521 years.
Not one Good Place resident in over 500 years? Not Jonas Salk? Not Harriet Tubman? Not one single Golden Girl? The Bad Place has hacked your system!
Including that he says, not a single Golden Girl, which is a fantastic delivery.
It's such a sitcom-y line, but it's like it's like, well, yeah, we are watching a situation comedy actually, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I would expect Rue McClanahan to be in heaven. Thank you.
Yeah.
Janet, Michael starts to become a little depressed, like, how are we going to do this? And Janet rallies him, encouraging him to think of himself as the one who's going to solve the problem, because he's the one who does. And again, some really, really fantastic reacting here. That not only is D'Arcy Carden doing this incredible job that she has to do in both scenes.
You know, he was supposed to tell us what to do. If he's not going to fix this, who is?
You, Michael. It has to be you. We keep wandering around these different realms expecting someone else to have the answer, but no one ever does. You're the guy, Michael. You're the only one who can fix whatever's wrong with the afterlife. But before we get into that, Eleanor's identity is shattering inside of my void, and I might blow up. So I'm gonna need you to grab a paperclip and marbleize me like yesterday.
What's going to happen to the humans?
No idea, but I can't take them out of my void in the middle of this office. And if we do nothing, everyone's gonzo. Marbleize me, get us somewhere safe, and bring me back.
Right, a paperclip. I need a paperclip. Hey, Matt, do you have a paperclip?
What are you going to use it for?
But we've got some great acting from Ted Danson here of sort of getting that sort of rally to him. But she says, like, yeah, we're going to do that and we're going to fix this problem. But right now I'm about to explode. So I need you to marbleize me real quick. And marbleizing is an act where you take a paperclip and put it behind the ear of a Janet like you're ejecting a disc out of an old computer, and it turns them into a marble. And so Michael turns and asks Matt for a paperclip, but Matt is unsure what he wants it for. And that is, again, a great stinger joke before we move into the emotional climax of the episode.
It's such a good delivery. What do you want it for? Yeah, and all the office stuff, it's like, it's so, like, you know, as much as this show obviously is a commentary on so many philosophical arguments and, you know, the way the world is now, like, just like the little bits of office culture and like having the idea of being someone who's in such an important position, but just sort of like, I don't know, I'm just doing my job. Everything's fine. No one's told me that my boss hasn't told me there's a problem, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Like, again, it's also like so real. Like, I think, you know, in on Earth, it's usually just because it's sort of like, I'm not paid enough to care about the corporation I'm working for. But it's still sort of like the same result, right? It's like nobody really does anything to solve any problems because it's sort of like, I'm just trying to do this to get by and not really thinking further, you know? And it's just like that on like the most macro scale imaginable here that like affects humanity. It's so like sad and dark, but like just so interesting at the same time.
But it's real. I mean, I could see myself even falling into a situation where I wouldn't be asking questions like, why has no one gone to the good place in 521 years? That it just seems like too long of a time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, back in a very damaged void, things are literally crumbling around them all. Eleanor is like transitioning faster and faster and faster. We're getting every background actor is getting their paycheck today.
Yeah.
Cheaty Janet tries to center her, and the way that he does that is by reminding her of all the ways that she is who she is, which, you know, is a great showing of how much Cheaty notices Eleanor, which is a very nice showing of love.
Memories. You need to remember who you are. You're Eleanor Shellstrop from Phoenix, Arizona. Your favorite meal is shrimp scampi. You listed your emergency contact as Britney Spears as a long shot way of meeting her, and your favorite movie is that clip of John Travolta saying Adele Dazeem. You flew halfway around the world because you wanted to be a better person, and it was very brave. You're sharp and you're strong. You make fun of me a lot. You once called me a human snooze button, but you also showed up in my classroom when I was drowning in despair and canned chili, and you basically saved my life.
And it's helping, but it's still not enough. which is when we get the big, like, most ambitious thing of this episode, I think, is the big kiss.
Yeah.
Because the way that the kiss is represented is, so as Chidi Janet is talking Eleanor down, she does eventually return to Janet form. So we have two Janets that kiss each other, which is, you know, cool enough, right, to have a visual thing where D'Arcy Carden has to kiss herself. But they're doing it. It's not a static shot. It is this like perpetually spinning shot around them, spinning around them. Then Janet turns into Kristen Bell kissing D'Arcy Carden because Eleanor returns to her form. So it's Kristen Bell kissing D'Arcy Carden. The spin continues until eventually D'Arcy Carden turns into William Jackson Harper. So Chidi and Eleanor are in their forms. But basically, D'Arcy Carden has to kiss herself, kiss Kristen Bell, and then Kristen Bell has to kiss William Jackson Harper, all in a rotating, continuous, fluid shot with not really much of a transition, really, either. Like, the fact that they put this on themselves to do it.
Yeah. And I'll also say, not only is it a technical marvel, but story delivery, it is impactful because it's the emotional climax. It's that Chidi was the thing that grounds Eleanor to who she is, that Chidi releasing himself to be able to love Eleanor situates him appropriately and sort of restores order in this moment. The music is beautiful. The void almost exploding, but then coming back together is beautiful. It really just is a moving sequence.
Yeah, it's like a big finale moment, you know, except it's in episode like 10. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It's so well done. It's such a perfect. It's really romantic, but it's also like a very important character moment for Chidi because it's someone who's always indecisive to decide to just commit to, like, you know what, you're right. That's what my feelings tell me. I don't know why or how, but I guess I love you. Yeah. And now we're going to kiss. Like, it's perfect. It's a perfect romance scene. It's so well done. The way that they filmed it is also so freaking funny because apparently, because D'Arcy Carden has to kiss herself, she can't literally do that. There are not two D'Arcy Cardens. So they had this long pole with a literal pair of, I think, like plastic lips on them. So she would have something to kiss that isn't a pole, I guess. So, and they're on like a Lazy Susan type thing to do the rotating because they have to film them rotating. So she is kissing plastic lips on a pole while rotating on a rotating stage, like, which is the most like funniest, weirdest thing.
Yeah.
If you're there on set watching that, how do you act that? And it's a hot kiss. It's a hot kiss kissing herself. It's a hot kiss kissing Kristen Bell. Like, she pulls it off, and I don't know how you could do that. Like, that's why acting is a job that you're paid a lot for. Like, it's so wild that's what they did.
Yeah. So again, a couple of actors are named in the transformation. So we do come first back to the buff dude. So this is Sean Riley Smith. Probably most significant acting credit outside of The Good Place was that he played Paul Bunyan in an episode of Adam Ruins Everything. And this is the guy I sent you to the IMDb link on, who wrote his own actor's bio, which I didn't know you could do in IMDb. And it's a trip. But he is a model and he's very handsome. He looks good in Eleanor's pink top and yoga pants.
It's funny that like they put him in her costume and then every single actor sequentially after that gets to be in like their own clothes.
Their own clothes.
They make it a point to be like, we've got to see this guy with the exposed like torso though.
It really sells it. And he's saying the things Eleanor would be saying, which is like, why don't you love me, Chidi? Eleanor's 7th transformation, the last credited one, is Garrett Nichols. And that's when the wardrobe is just all over the place. He's in a yellow shirt and black pants. And then it's Rapid Background, who are not credited actors. But one of them looks a lot like Azura Sky, who was the not Tara, Cassie from Buffy the Vampire Slayer Conversations with Dead People. I don't know if you clocked that. Or maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. I couldn't get confirmation on this.
I don't think it's her because I think that would have been a thing, and she's continued to act like she has a recurring role in Riverdale too. So that she would have been credited as a known actor if that was actually her. So I think that it just looked like
her. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and that's you as an actor, write into us. And also you should be a stunt double on Riverdale. Get in while you can.
I think they finished filming, so maybe not. Actually.
Well, try to get it rebooted. Unnamed actor.
For that one recurring character that I think was killed off like 2 seasons ago.
So well, that's not going to stop anyone in Riverdale, Derek.
That's true. That is very true. She actually surprised that. Actually, has she? She might have popped up this season, actually, because everybody's popped up. I don't remember now. I don't know. Every character's back on that show. We're not talking about Riverdale. We still got to talk about Good Place.
Well, once everything's resolved, we have this wonderful moment with Chidi where he tries to be sexy.
Did you mean everything you said, or did you just say it because the world was ending?
I really want to play this cool, but I'm afraid that I'm gonna ruin it if I try to be sexy. I already ruined it. Saying the word sexy is not sexy.
But then ends up being an even bigger nerd. And I cannot communicate to everyone listening that makes him incredibly more sexy in that moment.
Yeah, he was, yep. Back in accounting, Janet stops Michael from marbleizing her because actually everything's fine. They solve their issues. However, because they're unjanetified inside of there, it's not sitting well with her, and she just barfs them right up in the middle of the office, which is not good since they're like fugitives, right?
They're all here, and they're safe. From the old scary thing. Now there's a new scary thing.
It's such a great delivery. It's probably obviously I love the emotional climax, but it's probably to me the greatest line in the episode because he's so happy. Oh my God, my friends, they're all here. You're safe. And then the alarm sounds and he's like, ugh, from the last thing, now there's a new thing. And it just
like
gave me
the
vibes
show.
like, you know, when you're playing a video game and you beat like half the stuff and then there's just more shit you got to deal with. That's what these poor characters are going through.
It's just like the show in a nutshell, too, because it's sort of like every time it's sort of like, we solved the problem. Nope, now there's a greater problem in the universe that we somehow have to fix. Like, it just escalates every time. Like, yeah, it's such a great distillation of that. It's good. It's very funny.
Yeah. Well, we cut from there, and then we're in the sort of the last 2 scenes of the episode. We come back. It's under credits, and we're still in accounting. Neil comes up. He's got his corner piece of cake. To tell him, I have some insecurity because, you know, you all are interdimensional fugitives. And Michael explains the situation to the humans and how the accountant was no help. Neil has a nice line of just like rude, which was cute. Nice delivery. But Michael makes eye contact with Janet and he steals his resolve. He is now committed to be the one to help them. So he knocks over the corner piece of cake that Neil is holding, and Neil howls with grief over his lost corner piece. Which is great. It's just a really great moment. And they escape into the main office with the humans. With no option left, Michael sends the humans up the tube, taking the Book of Doug's on his way.
Can I make one complaint
about
this show? I very much appreciate and understand putting the credits over scenes to like save you time when you're on network television. I think that's a very smart, efficient way to do storytelling. And I don't mind. I know like a lot of comedies have done that, especially Michael Schur's stuff. When these things go to streaming and DVD, I think that there should be a cut where the credits aren't over,
just credits at the end,
aren't over the scene, and put them at the end because you don't have to worry about the time constraints.
Yeah.
And so many shows do that. Like, you know, I mean, that's not just the thing with The Good Place either. But I think with The Good Place, I think it's even worse. I think because with a lot of the comedies, usually the credits are over a stinger or something like that. But The Good Place, it's like episodes end on a giant cliffhanger and stuff. So credits are playing over like dramatic things and big moments that are happening.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need that when I'm watching it on streaming right now, man.
This is not Troy and Abed in the morning. This is not a cute little last joke, little. And like I said, there's 2 scenes left.
Yeah.
With, like,
it's wild.
Important plot points.
Yep.
And somewhere some Fox affiliate is being like, next time on The Simpsons, like it is popping up on like a side window because this is the time in which you make your bread. And like, that's not appropriate here. Like there's emotional climax still happening.
Yeah. I hate it. It's annoying.
I hate it. Well, even though you hate it, the humans all go up the tube and they end up coming out of a small door, and Michael tells them they're in the good place. But Eleanor has heard that one before, and so she asks him to be forking serious, and that's how they realize that because Eleanor cannot swear, and she sure does try, that they are actually in the real, honest-to-God good place. And the episode ends.
Yeah, which, I mean, can I overstate how huge that is, that they are finally in the title of the show? Like, the place that they thought that they were in the first season that they've never been to, they're finally there in this episode. Like, this is a very huge turning point for the show to finally actually get to that one place. Like, that it's and they pack it into this, like, high concept episode that's like a D'Arcy Carden spotlight. It's wild.
And what's wild is that when we pick up the next episode, they will not be able to leave the place in which they have landed, which means that these are back-to-back bottle episodes.
I forgot about that. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And this is like, you know, kind of a fake, not really a bottle episode, episode. And the next one is an actual bottle episode, probably to make up for all the money that this one cost to do. So actually, very smart storytelling choice.
Yeah.
I'm very here for that. Nice.
Yeah. And it's got Nicole Byer as a guest star, just fantastic.
That's right.
Great.
God, I need to rewatch this show.
Yeah, should have let it autoplay, Derek. I couldn't stop it in time, and then I was like, well, better keep watching until the end of season 3.
Yeah. God, what, like just a tour de force. I mean, tour de force performance for D'Arcy Carden, but also just like a really good episode of TV. And, you know, this is one of those that I think, like, it would be hard to just drop in on and watch this out of context, unfortunately, if you're listening, you know, and are that person. But I think you can't, I feel like you can't watch it and not just be impressed with the ambition of it. And even if you don't like go hard on the philosophy sides of it, which I do think are also well executed and how important they are to the episode and the backbone of it, I think just seeing like technically how well made this episode is, I think is already like miles above what a lot of TV is.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I really check it. If you haven't watched the series, I can't recommend Good Place enough. It's a fantastic show. I think it'll keep you laughing and maybe give you some stuff to think about. But honestly, you can get out of it without being too heady. I promise you. It's just it's a fun little ride.
It absolutely is. Yeah, you can think about a lot if you want to, but you can also not, and it's still really enjoyable because it's very funny and entertaining, and everybody's really good and also really hot. So
really attractive cast.
Oh my God. Well, this has been really fun. Any other closing thoughts?
No. Again, just like watch TV that makes you happy. I hope that this conversation has sort of gotten a few of you interested in The Good Place, but I loved this episode. I love Carden. If you're looking for other work that she's been in, she has obviously a fantastic IMDb page. Please don't sleep on her performance as the villain in an Emmy for Megan. In which she joined Megan Abraham in an attempt to steal her idea to earn an Emmy for a short film, which is what an Emmy for Megan is all about. It was a really fantastic little guest spot.
I remember that coming out, and I never watched it. I think I need to actually check it out.
You could watch other things, but the fact that it exists is kind of funny. I think D'Arcy Carden is very good.
She is very good. She also, whenever she's on Comedy Bang Bang, I would love. She's very, very good on Comedy Bang Bang.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely check out The Good Place. If you want to find the two of us, David, where can people find you and anything else you're doing?
Yeah, I'm available on most social media sites as DMuma. That's DMUMA. On Twitter, there's a 22 at the end, so find me there if you want to follow me. Otherwise, I'm on other socials just as DMuma. In my spare time, I'm working on becoming a video game designer, so if you want to learn a little bit about how I'm using math to make things that should be fun for people to play, I don't know, you should find a different hobby. But you can read a little bit about that journey on any of my socials.
Nice. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Derek B. Gale. Also on other social media. Just Google me. You'll find something, or look up my link tree. I don't know. I'm everywhere. Who knows what the state of social media is by the time this episode comes out, because it's all kind of in flux.
Truly,
but you can
and
find
honestly.
me there.
Yeah.
You can also, you can also listen to my other podcast, Walloping Web Snappers, a Spider-Man podcast that dives into every Spider-Man cartoon ever made, and also Falling with Style, which was an ongoing Pixar movie marathon where we watched every Pixar movie chronologically. But for gimmicks, if you want to support this show, you can give us a little tip by buying us a coffee at ko-fi.com/gimmicspod. You can also follow this podcast at gimmicspod on Twitter and Instagram, and email your questions, feedback, and corrections to gimmicspodcast@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe on all podcast platforms. And until next time, friends, keep being weird.
Ah, Dip.
I'm